Hey guys, JTX here. This is my final build for the league and probably one of the most crazy builds I've ever done in Path of Exile. Probably saw from the footage earlier in the video that there's a lot of things happening on the screen. Computer heats up when I play this build. Perfect Path of Exile build where you kind of push a character to the limits of seeing what it can do, and you get a character like this. Before I jump into the video today, I'd like to quickly talk about a software I've been using recently to help optimize Path of Exile's performance, especially with a build like this feel a little bit smoother, as it does get a little bit crazy towards the end game. The software itself is called GearUp Booster. I've actually tested a bunch of network boosting softwares in the past just to see if I can make Path of Exile a bit smoother, especially when my connection and my internet wasn't so great in the past, just to see if I could actually make it feel a little bit smoother. GearUp Booster seemed to actually have a pretty good outcome and actually reduced my ping by quite a bit. I reached out to them to see if they were actually doing any promotions or any sponsorship, and they actually agreed. So this video is actually sponsored by them. So what exactly is GearUp Booster? It's software that actually helps stabilize your network connection and also reduce your ping and lag spikes in games such as Path of Exile, Diablo 4, or any other game that you play that has an online connection. Quick note that the boosting effect from the software might not be the same in different regions. If your network already is pretty ideal like mine, I have very low ping already, there's only so much the software can do to reduce your ping or stabilize your connection. If you guys do want to try out the software, I'll have a referral link in the description down below so you guys can check it out for yourself. So when you open up the console, this is what it looks like. You'll be able to select from a list of games that you're able to boost, and it'll also pull the games already on your computer. So for us, that'll be Path of Exile here. It's very easy to do. As soon as you want to boost a game, make sure you close Path of Exile before you do it, and then you click boost. And then the GearUp Booster will begin running automatically, trying to determine what the best connection settings are for you, and also what the best way for it to route your network is. He'll say, please restart the game. So I'll ask you to restart your Path of Exile game. It should tell you that you're logging in from a new location. Yep, so this lets you know that the booster is actually activated. After you've logged back in, it will show you the estimated ping for in-game as well as the improvement that it's giving you. This is also the amount of packet loss that you have. And you can see down below, this is the routing detail of how the game's actually being routed. So obviously, I'm based in Melbourne, Australia, and it's showing how the traffic is going from my PC into the actual game server. So it's taking it through both of the Melbourne servers. Sometimes Path of Exile might default to Sydney servers or other servers nearby, so it might not give me the optimal routing in terms of ping. This is a quick rundown of how the software works. Very easy to use. Just click boost and it should automatically identify what the best path is for your traffic. And you'll see a improvement in both the stability and a reduction in your ping. That's pretty much how the software works. Really self-explanatory. If you want to stop boosting, you click stop boosting, and then the game will probably disconnect. And obviously you can boost other games as well. There we go, we disconnected. And there's a lot of games that you can choose to boost. So obviously if you guys play other games, you can give this a go as well. Download it and sign up, and then you'll get a 3-day free trial. So you can try it out for yourself to see how it works. I hope you can use it for the Path of Exile League start. As you can see the comparisons, you can see the two different pings, one with GearUp Booster on, one with GearUp Booster off. It might not be a significant difference. Depending on your connection, it might make a major improvement to your game experience. I think it's worth trying out if you feel like your connection isn't always the best. See if it can improve your Path of Exile experience. I'll jump into the build now. The build itself is a Kinetic Blast Cast on Crit Soulrend Ascendant using the Nimbus ring. The build's actually been showcased previously, I think in the previous couple of leagues with different Ascendancies, different takes on it. Polsteron has a video on it using Fireball, and then there's also another version using Creeping Frost. There's also Forbidden Rite. A lot of ways you can build this character. I picked Soulrend because personally I love the Celestial Cat MTX. Also, always thought it was awesome, and also because with Soulrend, with its phantasmal quality, you have a special modifier which gives you increased damage with hits. So this build is actually a hit-based Soulrend build compared to normal Soulrend builds, which are DOT or Chaos DOT builds. And the whole build is catered around trying to get as many cats as possible onto the screen to delete everything in your path. Now the build's actually gone over a couple of iterations that I've been testing over the last week or so, just trying to really feel out the character. And I've kind of come to the conclusion that there's probably two ways you can build this. I've gone with Ascendant simply because I haven't played an Ascendant in a really long time. I wanted to see if Ascendant's still viable as an Ascendancy choice. I think this build probably is a bit better as a Pathfinder, just due to how the way damage conversion works and how we actually want to min-max the Flask usage in this build. I've made it work as an Ascendant, and I think the build works fine. It's been able to take on 100% daily maps, got me up to like Wave 29 Simulacrum takes on all endgame content pretty comfortably. But I do think a Pathfinder will probably be a bit easier in terms of gearing as well as in terms of pathing on the tree. So I'll go into the actual skill tree that I've done for my Ascendant here. It's just a very generic Ranger start, and this uses the tech from this league, Warrior's Tale, which gives you increased effective tattoos and radius. I do know that tattoos won't be available next league, but I have a strong suspicion that they might return in the future. So the tattoo setup here is just to use the additional projectiles here. So we have 2 Ramako Makangas here, so for additional 4 projectiles into the build. This lets us actually drop GMP in our setup, so we don't get damage penalty for running GMP. So it's actually really, really strong for a hit-based projectile build like this. Also, you know, I have Crimson Dance here. This is just a useless keystone. I had to tattoo over this keystone because the original keystone is really, really bad for the build. Ideally, you probably get something that you could use, like either EB or even like Imbalanced Guard, something that's useful. As long as it doesn't break your build, it's fine. Even if it does nothing, it's fine. You just need to take it so you can activate the condition effect for Ramako and Makanga. And obviously, the rest of the tree just curves all the way up. So we have Whispers of Doom here to get additional curse. We also have some crit here, and we have some reservation nodes here. We're running 2 large cluster setups here for chaos damage. We also have a source of explode here on unspeakable gifts. Just generic chaos damage nodes here as well, just for a bit more damage, as well as the chaos mastery for additional skill gems. Soulrend scales really, really well with gem levels, so we are trying to squeeze out as many gem levels as possible in the build. For the Ascendancy, we're running a Pathfinder and Assassin. We run Assassin because Soulrend has awful base crit strike chance for the spell, so we try to give it some flat crit where possible. And we run Pathfinder because we are converting 100% of our physical taken into elemental, and Pathfinder is really, really good for this to help us sustain our Flasks, as well as to give us a little bit of extra attack movement speed while we have Flasks up. We also have the Raider Ascendancy with the Forbidden Flame, Forbidden Flesh. This helps us cap out our spell suppression and gives us access to frenzy charges as well as onslaught, so really, really nice for a build like this. In terms of unique jewels for the build, we're running an Unnatural Instinct here, and we've tattooed life onto these ones here because it gives all unallocated small passive skills and radius. People have done this with the max cold res as well. It's a lot of choices you can do here. I've gone with life because this build is a little bit life starved, so we try to get life wherever we can on the tree. We also run a Balance of Terror here. Balance of Terror is really, really strong because if we cast Despair, we make all of our attacks inflict wither, and because we have so many projectiles, we'll be getting to maximum stacks really, really quickly. This gives a massive damage boost in terms of single target damage. Most of the time, you won't be pressing this when you're doing general mapping. This is only for really, really juiced bosses and ideally endgame encounters. Over here, we also have an Ancestral Vision to help us cap our ailment immunity. We are 100% spell suppression capped, so this gives us 50% chance to avoid elemental ailments. We get the remaining 50% on our boots here. We run an Impossible Escape here for radius of Ancestral Bond. This is just a really, really nice node for us. We get spell crit here, we get a bit of life, and we get a reservation efficiency node here, which is really, really powerful. Alternatively, you could also get a Rune Binder. I believe this is a bit more expensive. I got Ancestral Bond pretty cheap, I think like 1 or 2 divs for essentially the same effect. You don't get access to the Arcane Potency here, but I do believe you get access to Sovereignty, which is really, really powerful. But for the sake of this build, the Impossible Escape with Ancestral Bond is fine. For Watcher's Eye, we're just running a crit multi-precision plus vitality life gain on hit. Because we are attacking so much with the Kinetic Blast and Soulrend projectiles coming back and forth with Nimbus, we're getting a crazy amount of life on hit with this build, and you also see in the footage our HP pretty much gets instantly filled up as soon as we start attacking. It also combos really, really well with our Progenesis because it lets us recover a lot of life, and also any big hits we can kind of mitigate by just making sure that we continue to attack. For the actual cluster nodes as well, I'll go over them quickly. We want Unspeakable Gifts for a chance to explode. You can run 2 of these if you want. I'm only running 1 just for a little bit of extra clear. You also get Touch of Cruelty, so you hinder enemies, and then enemies hindered by you take 10% increased chaos damage. A lot of the effects in this build actually benefit a lot just from a little bit of chance because we hit so much. So even a 10% chance to hinder on hit with the amount of projectiles we're coming out, it's going to pretty much mean that it has 100% uptime on anything we hit. We run a medium cluster here with just Pressure Points and Quick Getaway, very generic crit-based cluster jewel. On the cluster here, I run Touch of Cruelty, Wicked Paw, and Unholy Grace. Unholy Grace is really good for this build because it gives us a bit of attack speed, and getting the attack speed up as a wonder is really, really important. If we want to trigger our cast on crit, we want a lot of attack speed, so just a little bit of attack speed helps here as well. You can go for either combination of these nodes on your cluster jewels. The main thing is just have 1 node with Touch of Cruelty and 1 node with Unspeakable Gifts. Those are the 2 I would highly recommend having in the build because it gives you a lot of extra damage and a bit of extra clear. The other ones you can mix and match as needed. I also quite value the Unholy Grace, but it's really up to you on how what type of cluster jewel you want to go for. In terms of actual tattoos, we have a lot of spell suppression across the tree here, as well as a +1 to all in skill gems. I think tattoos are probably one of the coolest things that GGG have done and added into the endgame system to help us min-max our builds. I don't see a world where tattoos don't come back in the future. I think they will come back in a certain form or fashion. Obviously, they've confirmed that it's not coming back next league, but I do look forward to seeing them come back in some way in the future. This build can still be run next league as well if you're interested in trying out this build, but I would highly recommend you run it as a Pathfinder instead. And there's a couple of things you have to kind of tweak to emulate the loss of the tattoos, but I think you can still get a build to about its 95% effectiveness of the current one you see here. Without too much trouble. The other tattoos you run are just generic +4 attributes and elemental res and life where possible. I'll go into the gear choices now. After a lot of testing, I did want this build to push into the end game, help me do my challenges. So this would be like the ridiculous 100% Delhi Guardian maps and the simulacrum waves that need to be ran. So this build has kind of been designed around that. I've also provided an alternative if you want to just go fast and you don't have to really care so much about min-maxing your effective hit pool. With this current setup, we're sitting around 60k effective hit pool without our steel skin, getting close to 97 to 100k with our steel skin up. So it's very, very tanky in terms of what we need as a generic mapper. You're not going to die very much in maps. I'll quickly go over the defensive layers that we do have. For this build, we have 100% spell suppression. We have 100% chance to avoid elemental elements. We should have almost 100% uptime on our Flasks being a Pathfinder, as well as our belt mod giving us extra Flasks when we do critical strikes, and we will be doing a lot of critical strikes. We have about 14,000 evasion rating, and we have elusive from the Ascendancy, and we convert 100% of our physical into elemental, so this build is actually decently tanky in terms of pushing endgame maps. In terms of gearing, we're running a lightning coil here. The ideal setup is to have a +1/+2 lightning coil, so +1 socket of gems, +2 either to proj, AoE, or duration gems, because Soulrend does benefit a lot from having gem levels. You can see it's level 32 here. It can be pushed even higher with the correct gear. Most of this gear is kind of hard to source in the last few weeks of the league, so I've had to make do with everything I could. So I couldn't get the absolute best gear for this build, so I had to make do where I could. For our weapon, we're running a +2 skill level 1, so +1 spell skill gems, +1 chaos spell skill gems. We also make sure we have crit strike chance on this because we are a one-based, we still are an attack-based build to trigger our cock, and we have the harvest enchant for additional crit strike chance per 4% quality. For our shield, we're running the Dawnbreaker. This is just to help us hit 100% physical taken as elemental. So this combined with our lightning coil, that's 70% already. For our helmet, we get another 16% from the Delve mod plus the Eldritch mod. Other rolls on the helmets, just a bit of ES and life. And then the final 15% comes from our flask. So that's how we actually get 100% phys taken as elemental. For our ring, we're obviously running a Nimbus. Nimbus is really, really good for the build, pretty much doubles the damage that we do by making our projectiles return to us. Other ring is just a curse on hit despair. Nothing too crazy, minus mana cost here as well. Amulet is Ashes of the Stars. This amulet is very, very, very powerful for this build because of the quality it gives to Phantasmal Soulrend, as well as a bunch of other gems in the build. Overall, really, really, really powerful amulet. Obviously, the alternative is you can run Replica Dragonfang's Flight, probably one of my favorite amulets that's come from this league. +3 to Soulrend gems is ridiculously powerful as well, so it is a very, very good alternative and also comes with mana reservation efficiency on it. For our gloves, very typical rare gear, life resistances, suppression, as well as a chance to unnerve enemies on hit with our Eldritch mod. For our boots, similarly, talked over it before, elemental ailment avoidance plus movement speed. This boot has action speed on it. Alternatively, you could also go for drop brittle ground to help increase the crit strike chance for our build. For our belt, life, resistances, a bit of strength, and flask charges when you do critical strikes, really good for our build. In terms of our flasks, because we are a Pathfinder, we want to make full use of our Ascendancy. So we're running almost 4 unique flasks. So we're running Bottled Faith for additional damage and crit strike chance, Dying Sun for additional projectiles, Progenesis for a huge bump in our effective hit pool, and Topaz Flasks with reduced mana cost of skills during effect. This is really, really important to bring down the cost of our KB and Soulrend. KB and Soulrend have an extremely, extremely high cost, and without this type of reduction in the mana cost, it will quickly deplete our energy shield, our mana pool, whatever way you're choosing to cast it. This mod's really, really important, and with Pathfinder, we can maintain this up permanently in maps. And finally, Taste of Hate to help us convert the remaining 15% of physical taken into elemental. So the gear set I currently went over is the very, very endgame focused, like 100% Delhi boss killing just pretty much super uber tanky version of this build. If you want to go for an alternative set of gear to allow for much faster mapping, while you don't care about a lot of the mods compared to doing like 100% daily content, you can alternatively opt in a Devoter's Devotion for a bit of extra movement speed, and you also get a power charge corrupt on this if possible. You run a Series Reflection. We become curse immune. It gives us a lot of ES and evasion rating, so we can actually help our EB sustain. And we run a Dialis here. Dialis is ridiculously powerful for a build like this. You can pretty much swap these two chests interchangeably depending on what the type of content you're doing. Dialis gives a crazy amount of damage to the build, while Lightning Coil gives a crazy amount of defenses. It really depends on what type of content you're going to be pursuing with the build. I've used Dialis for most of the endgame leveling content, and I only switched to a Lightning Coil for the final push for 100% daily maps. So that's an option if you want to change around the gear. If you do want to try a more speedy, less tanky version of the build, I recommend that gear swap. I'll go over the gem links now that I run in the build. So running Flame Dash with faster casting and Despair. Despair is just there to proc Balance of Terror, so we create Wither on hit. In our helmet, we have Anomalous Blood and Sand. Anomalous Blood and Sand gives us the alt quality gives projectile speed, which is very, very important for a build like KB and Soulrend. We want the projectiles to come in and out very fast in case monsters move, and also we don't want to wait too long for damage to start ramping up. Vitality here, just for the Watcher's Eye life gain on hit mod, and Anomalous Precision. This gives us additional reservation efficiency, combos very well with Ashes of the Stars. In our shield, we're running Steel Skin linked to increased duration support. We put this on our left click, so we pretty much have it up whenever we're walking around in maps. Makes us a lot more tanky, and also makes us immune to bleeding. For our cast and crit setup, we're running Phantasmal Soulrend linked with Anomalous KB. Anomalous KB gives additional projectile pierce. Divergent cast on crit, this is really good because it gives us additional attack speed. You don't need to run Awakened cast on crit because we're not going to be hitting the, I believe, 7 attack trigger point. We set around 4, maybe 5 in maps, so we don't need to run any cooldown reduction in the build. This is also linked to Awakened Void Manipulation, really good because it gives +1 supported scale skill gems, which in turn makes our Soulrend even higher. Increased critical damage support, and Empower. In our gloves, it's the Aura setup, just Zealotry with Haste linked to Enlighten and Grace. In our boots, we have Assassin's Mark linked to Divergent Mark on hit support, Enhance, and Blood Rage. Blood Rage gives a lot of attack speed, so combined with an Enhance plus Ashes, we get we get 34% attack speed from Blood Rage, which is insane. And for the mark we choose, there's 2 choices here. You can go Assassin's Mark or Sniper's Mark. Sniper's Mark if you're more focused towards mapping and just trying to get as much projectiles and coverage as possible. Assassin's Mark is definitely better for endgame boss fights or single targets. Play around with both, see which one you like. I recommend Assassin's Mark because it also gives us a chance to get a power charge when hit. It helps us get our power charges up really, really quickly on single target enemies. And finally, in our Stygian Vice, we just have a jewel with a bit of reservation, crit multi, life, and a chance to blind enemies on hit. Really, really powerful with the amount of projectiles we're putting out, so we'll be pretty much consistently blinding all enemies. For Pantheon, I'm just running Soul of the Brine King and Soul of Aberath. This is just generally for the type of content you're running. Obviously, upgrade this if you're worried about burning ground. If you're worried about DOTs, you can go Soul of Arakali. Quickly jump into the PoB numbers now. As you can see with the very tanky version of our build, we're sitting at about 97k effective hit pool without Steel Skin, sitting around 62k. Very, very tanky, and what we used to do very, very challenging content like Delirium. Damage is sitting at about 4.6 million per Soulrend, and I believe we hit 2 or 3 times with the overlap with Nimbus, so between 8 to 13 million damage total. Obviously, it's not an insane amount of damage. I would say this is a pretty respectable amount of damage for the amount of clear speed and mapping quality that we have with KB and Soulrend. We also have capped spell suppression and 100% ailment avoidance, as well as a decent amount of movement speed that's not reliant on Flasks, so we're 115 always in maps. And we're sitting at about 70% chance to evade with the blind plus elusive plus our evasion rating. Quickly just to go over into our configs, a couple settings we have to make sure that are checked here to replicate what's going on in our build. Frenzy from Raider, power charges from Assassin, elusives also from Assassin, Consecrated Ground from Bottled Faith. I don't mention before, we also run a Rational Doctrine. Rational Doctrine is a really, really powerful jewel that gives you a chance to create Profane Ground on critical strike. Profane Ground, similar to Consecrated Ground, it makes enemies have minus 10% to the elemental reses, which doesn't really help us because we're chaos damage, but also gives 100% increased critical strike chance against them. So really, really powerful for a crit-based build like we are here. The caveat is that we have to make sure our intelligence is our highest attribute. So you can see on the left here, our intelligence is the highest. If you balance your strength and intelligence, it also creates consecrated ground around you while stationary. So this is the less tanky version of the build that's meant more for mapping and more quality of life. We run a Series Reflection, so we are curse immune. We also run the Dialer's Malefaction. So with the Dialers, you can see that there's a big damage increase. We're sitting at around 8.5 million. And then if you turn Nimbus on, between 16 million all the way up to 20 million damage. So a lot more damage on this version. Much better for just quickly doing maps and deleting map bosses. Obviously not as tanky. We're still sitting around a decent amount of effective hit pool. We're sitting around 48k with Steel Skin up and 30k with a Steel Skin off. Obviously nowhere near as tanky as the full Fizz to Elemental conversion one, but I think for general mapping it's fine as long as you're not doing anything like 100% daily maps. This will be more than enough defense just to be comfortable in regular maps. I also include a Pathfinder PoB of this build in the description. I strongly believe that the Pathfinder is the way to go. If I were to build this again, I'd probably go Pathfinder, especially if I were to do it next league. I would do Pathfinder instead because of the removal of the tattoo system. Pathfinder would be a lot easier to get some of the power back with projectiles by taking the Deadeye Ascendancy with Forbidden Flame, Forbidden Flesh. A couple key things to note as well, because we are running EB, we can reserve 100% of our mana. You can see that I have pretty much 0% unreserved mana. The other fact to note about EB is we have to make sure our energy shield pool is decently big enough that it can kind of support the recharge to sustain the amount of spells / attacks that we're casting. Between 700 to 1000 is your sweet spot to get enough energy shield to sustain your trigger rate. I've tried a variation without EB. It involves you taking Anomalous, Greater Multiple Projectiles, which gives you a minus mana cost to your skills. And you combine that with the Dialer, so you get like up to 50% minus mana cost. That way you can run it without EB, and you can get energy shield to protect your life instead. You can run like Ghost Dance if you want. That's also an option. I would definitely say this is a mapping character that has the potential to boss, rather than a bossing character that's the potential to map. I put this character out as kind of like a fun final project for the league, seeing how much, I guess, visual clutter you can fit into a single build. Some of the footage that I've recorded goes down to about 1 frame every 4 or 5 seconds due to how much is happening on the screen. I think that's part of the beauty of Path of Exile, that you can create builds that potentially are game-breaking / server-breaking in this case. I've had a lot of fun playing this build, just seeing the amount of cats and celestial ground coverage I can do with the MTX. Definitely think this is one of the more fun builds that I've ever played. And I think it's very possible to do this next league as well with a couple of tweaks, mainly just running it as a Pathfinder instead of an Ascendant and tweaking the build there. I have a PoB for both the Ascendant and Pathfinder version of the build. I've been playing PoE for a super long time, and I'm still really surprised and happy when it comes to builds like these that can be made. I'm really looking forward to the next league, as well as how GGG takes the endgame expansion and what we'll be doing instead of red and blue altars for the foreseeable future. Make sure you guys also check out GearUp Booster. I'll put a link in the description with my referral link so you guys can have a look. Definitely think it's worth checking out if it can help you out a little bit. Make sure that you do sign up for the 3-day free trial and give it a go. See if it actually helps out your PoE performance a little bit like it did for mine. Definitely any little bit of performance for a build like this is a big game changer, and it potentially could be even more for depending on where you are. Appreciate all the support that you guys have shown for all of my previous videos. Be sure to leave a comment if you thought this build was interesting. I do love reading all the comments, and I try to respond to people whenever I can. If you do want to watch more content coming up from me, be sure to subscribe. I'll be doing a lot of content coverage for the weeks leading up into the league start, as well as be streaming the league start from my channel at twitch.tv/JTX. As always, guys, appreciate all the support. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.